Thanks everyone for joining us. We realize that it's lunchtime on the last day. You're probably all exhausted, but it's really good to have you here. So we're here today to talk about two-factor authentication, what it is, why you want it. We'll ask a number of questions. So if you answer a question or you actually ask a question at the end, we have some lovely prizes for you. These are UTF hardware tokens, so please listen up and stay engaged and hopefully you'll win something. As always, we're a publicly listed company, so please only make purchasing decisions based on information that's publicly available. My name's Alistair Thompson. I'm an infrastructure security engineer here at Salesforce Trust.
I'm George Hill, and I'm a network security engineer that works with Al and the Trust team. Okay. Well, can you hear me now? There we go. I'm George Hill. I'm a network security engineer that works with Al and the Trust team. So today we're going to talk about what is two-factor. In fact, we're going to start with what is authentication to begin with. Then we're going to go into why do you need it, some of the attacks against traditional authentication. We're going to go how to enable two-factor authentication on the platform. And then we're also going to talk about some new features that are coming and some other security considerations.
All right, so let's start with what is multi-factor authentication, just a primer for everyone here. What is identity? What is authentication? How does a kid know his mum's face? How do you really know who someone is? When you're dealing with online services, it's a very big problem. Authentication involves factors. Hopefully you use more than one of them, but in a lot of cases, it's just one. Usually that one is something you know. Examples of this are secrets you provide in passwords, for example. Another factor is something that you have, which is like the keys to enter your house, your car, that kind of thing. Or it could be something you are, right? You have your fingerprint, you are your iris, you are your personality. That can't change. So you have two of the same type of factors. So say, I don't know, like your mother's maiden name and your secret. That's not two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication requires you to have two separate types of factors, right? So you have something on you, something on your possession, like your keys to enter your house, right? And you know, the name of your dog to call out so you don't get bitten along the way. If you have multi-factor authentication, right, it's involving more than two types of factors. So many of you may have gone through SFO on the way here. You may have gone through a smart gate, right? I'm sure some of you have seen these things. It's a machine which has to authenticate you. It has to authenticate you pretty well if you're going to enter the United States. So you have your passport with you. You have your boarding pass. You are your iris. You are your fingerprint. You know where you live. And you know your date of birth.
All right, so for a UTF token, who can tell me the most common factor that's used on the internet? Someone said password over there.
Yeah. All right.
There you go. I'm going to put it right here. So password's the most common one, and why do we rely on them? It's because they're easy. They're easy to implement as a developer, and we've gotten used to them. Like from the first time sharing computers back in the 60s, passwords were implemented to tell a user apart, authenticate a user. So it's been the convenient solution, but it's not necessarily the secure solution.
Right, and this presents some problems because passwords aren't perfect. Let's take our example, Cave Johnson. He's from Aperture Science. So he uses the name cave@johnson.net, and his password is Jono, right? It's a familiar password, it's easy to remember, but it's also really easy to guess. And that means it's easy to machine guess, which means brute force. So Jono goes through the usual password training. He has to add complexity to his password, right? So he makes Jono in a cave 1989, which happens to be his birth date, like Taylor Swift. He adds character depth. He adds some capital letters, numbers, exclamations. Makes it a little bit more difficult. But then they tell him, you have to substitute characters, make it more random. You can't base it on dictionary words, so he uses substitutions. These don't really add any value. People generally use the same substitutions. Think of it as 30 characters in the alphabet. So they're not really of much value. Then you have rotation policy, so all of a sudden he has to change it to 90, then 91, but he can't do incrementing values at the end, so he puts an exclamation mark afterwards. And then he just gives up. He can't remember the password, so he just whacks it on a Post-it and sticks it on his computer under his desk. You know your story. You've seen it before. So passwords are really fundamentally broken, right? They rely on a single factor. Once they're stolen, they can be reproduced by anyone. They're static. They don't really change. They're not contextual. They're the same regardless of where you use them. They fail to provide any strong assurance of an identity, right? All you know is that secret. You don't know exactly who that is. Think of it as like chatting to someone with a blindfold on, right? All they're saying is one word. You don't actually know much about that. Users also rely on passwords for the majority of their online services.
So why do you need two-factor authentication with Salesforce? So what do these celebrities all have in common besides being celebrities?
Anyone want to win a token? Yeah, that's true. Anyone give us like a more specific answer? Sorry, we don't mean to hurt anyone as well with these tokens. Yeah, but how are they hacked? Can you, there's a microphone just there.
Using their social accounts or
Sorry?
using their social accounts like password?
No, but thanks for asking a question. I didn't say you had to get it right. Anyone else know the answer? Sorry? No, it wasn't brute force, but you still get a token. Huh? Sorry? I can't hear.
No, not really.
No, not serious. So what happened is they were all in public data breaches, right? Not private ones, but public data breaches.
And they were all public data breaches related to reusing passwords from one site to another. So the big thing there is password reuse is a major issue. Like Mark Zuckerberg created an account that he hadn't used in years on a service that got popped. But he had a similar password used in Twitter, so his Twitter account got hacked this year, taken over by a threat group. Next slide. Sundar Pichai had something similar. Like he actually had a strong password on his Twitter account, except he linked it to a site where he had reused a password from a hack site. So they took over his Quora account and used that to start posting things to his Twitter. Drake had something similar. He used a password from 2008 from a service that got popped 5 years later, but all he did was change capitalization when he used it on Twitter. And then finally, Katy Perry actually did something similar, but got to the point where she actually lost an unreleased signal. So she lost the press value, she lost potential sales because she reused a password.
And these are just some common celebrities, and we chose them because all you know them, but I guarantee your users have been in a breach one time or another, and most of those breaches aren't public. So yeah, just keep that in mind.
To go through some of the major breaches, like these are really the top 3 out there right now. If you look at the total number of passwords that have been out, it was about 1 billion for the top 5. That's actually been up now that Yahoo is starting to hit the net. And you're looking at probably 1.5 billion passwords just for the top 6 breaches. If you include more, you're probably getting closer to the 2 billion mark. So just to go through some of them, like I'm not going to say the names, but you can probably guess. Like a major business social network lost 164 million passwords. This is one of the major factors. They were all weakly protected. They were used for almost all the ones we just said. To show you how bad user passwords can be, 750,000 people had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Another 172,000 had LinkedIn. You can probably guess what the social network is at this point. A major creativity software provider got its online cloud database hacked. 150 million passwords, weakly protected again. Another 2 million used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then 350,000 just used password. As basic as you can get. And then a major personal social network got hacked. This one I call the ghost of 2008 because it was really popular about 10 years ago. So many people created accounts and then promptly forgot about them. Like, there's probably people who have never logged into this service in the past 5 years. But when its password database hit the net, suddenly you had a historic record of passwords and so many people reuse them and forget to change them that passwords on their own are essentially broken because of this.
Yeah, and we had a more recent one. We don't know exactly how protected those accounts were, but 500 million from another major
Yahoo will probably be a lot slower to crack. They have a much better encryption level than these. But it's still going to take, it's just over time they will be done as soon as the breaches hit the open.
This is a big problem. So time to be honest, right? Who here uses the same password for more than one service? I'm going to guess like everyone in the room, right? So the problem with this is if you use the same password on one service, you don't really know where it's being stored. And it's being stored inconsistently, right? This XKCD, if you're a fan, I definitely recommend checking out his comics. They're hilarious for anyone in the tech industry. But yeah, it kind of highlights the problem, right? It highlights that all you need to do is have some kind of like, promotion campaign, whatever, and that's a great way to phish users legitimately, right? They're not actually getting phished, but in a way, the minute that gets owned, they are, and the impact is still the same.
So the big point is that it drops the password security level to the lowest common denominator for every service you use that password in. So someone's little project account that's a simple little CRUD thing, but has username and passwords, if it gets popped, the database gets popped, those passwords are now useful elsewhere. So,
right. So passwords also aren't great against a bunch of other threats. Some of these are generic malware, so this could really be any off-the-shelf malware, any kit, pretty much every single piece of malware there. The first thing it does is capture all your keystrokes, right? That includes all your passwords, everything you type in. It's 2016, but phishing is still a problem, right? We see this all the time in countless organizations where phishing campaigns trivially work for large numbers of users, right? Google Docs, I'm sure you guys have seen the Google Docs scams that do the rounds. It's a huge problem. Social engineering, you see this a lot when you walk around IT organizations, help desk users legitimately or illegitimately asking users to share their password or log on to the system that happens to be the same password for their Facebook and all their other accounts. Or you might have scenarios where you get a call, right? And the call's from help desk and they need you to unlock your account or something like that, and they actually grab that password through a social engineering call. Man on the browser malware, and this is probably one of the trickiest things to defend against, right? Because you have really targeted malware specifically targeting certain popular websites. They usually are like next to impossible for most enterprise security teams to detect, especially initially when the threat happens. They contain proxy capabilities. Now what this means is if you've got IP whitelisting restrictions, you can't rely on that alone, right? Because they're going to actually be using your network to log in and steal your data. They have the ability to intercept IC tokens. So that can be like SMS tokens, email verification tokens, or actually changing the appearance of a website by injecting straight into the browser. Two examples you can read up about on the help and training portal are Bortrak and Direza. Another really, really big problem is network interception. And this can be as simple as doing a downgrade attack on a user at a cafe. Users don't actually check for that green bar on the left-hand side. It's so easy to convince a user to just log into a similar looking page if you convert it to plain text. You also can't trust certificate authorities anymore, right? We've seen a whole bunch of CAs in scrupulous countries issue certificates that are valid in the browser that they haven't verified the ownership for, or intentionally are verified to the wrong parties. You can't rely on this alone. You need more, especially for critical components like authentication. And also finally, email and SMS networks. Majority of email servers out there still don't support email encryption. You also have like SMS networks running in clear. So if you're going overseas or even in interesting ISPs in some major first world countries, that still becomes a huge problem if you're relying on that alone. So two-factor authentication works really well against password compromise, right? The second factor needs something on you, right? It needs your set of keys to get into your house. It needs to physically attack you in most cases. It's almost always the case that tokens are unique per site. You can't take a token for Google and use it on Salesforce or vice versa. Password complexity doesn't really matter once the value's been captured. If you've got a 20 long digit phrase password that's an entire verse of the Bible, it doesn't make a difference once it's captured. It can easily be repeated. Replay attacks don't work because times are usually like incremented or they're based on time. Or in Salesforce Authenticator, we'll talk about it in a moment, push notifications gets past that. And you won't have an issue with brute force.
So, why protect your Salesforce instance with this? It all comes down to why do you use Salesforce? You use Salesforce to store information that's valuable to you and probably valuable to somebody else. Including it's valuable to the customers that give it to you. So, you have a trust in that when customers give it to you, they trust you to maintain that information in a way that it won't pop up on a pastebin article with all your information in it. So because of that, use the security features like 2FA to protect it. So make your company a hard target. The harder and more complex your defenses are, They're by no way impenetrable, but they make it so that the people with the skills, the time and the inclination to go after it are much fewer. A smart attacker is going to go after low-hanging fruit for valuable information. They're going to go for the least offended, the easiest to get to, because it's the lowest risk for them. They're less likely to get caught. It takes less of their time, so they can go hit more targets and make more money. The stronger you are, the harder it is. So you have to up the risk for them so the reward isn't worth the time.
Oh, and also, two-factor authentication is one of those things where just a tiny change makes the world of difference in complexity for an attacker. It's probably the simplest thing you can do to secure your Salesforce org.
So we're going to go over the different ones we have. So the basic one is called identity confirmation. This is a time-based OTP sent through a text message, an SMS. It is kind of our most basic level authentication. Like we've talked about SMS not being secure. But what it does is it provides a default authentication if you come in from an unknown browser. As long as a user has a phone number associated and they come in from a browser they have not used before, it will trigger an SMS or an email to them with a one-time password that will make it significantly harder than just a password alone to get in. The nice thing is, because it's a text, every phone since 2G on can read the text and be used without having a special program. You don't need to have a specific model of smartphone. But it's insecure, and people have gone after text-based authentication. NIST no longer recommends it because you can go after phone porting. Coinbase, one of the major Bitcoin companies, just got hit by this hard, where someone social engineered Verizon and ported one of their developers' numbers to a VoIP line and then captured all the text sent to it. You can also, if the phone is stolen, do SIM cloning to some extent. It's harder nowadays. But as mobile malware grows, they're also going after text and any kind of authentication token to go for it. Anything sent to the phone will be recorded and sent to whoever is running the malware. The final thing is, just in terms of user experience, it's probably the worst. So a text can take up to 10 seconds domestically. When you go international, that can be a lot longer. And then on top of it, it still needs to be copied from a text to whatever they're doing. So on a phone, they might have to switch apps to get back to it. So it isn't the best user experience we have.
Yeah, just a reminder, this is turned on by default for everyone who has a registered phone number. So make sure at minimum, right, if you do nothing today, that you ensure that all your users have registered mobile phone numbers on their account.
So we've been bad, but you got to realize that even that is still drastically better than a password alone.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll quickly talk about TOTP. We support the RFC standard. This is what you see in Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, a whole bunch of other products. It's a similar story, right? It still relies on users typing stuff in. It can still be phished and captured by browser injection or phishing, but the one advantage is it's locally generated, so it can't be intercepted. The challenge with this is you don't know which device it's been used on. You also don't know if that device has been compromised and the token value has been used somewhere else. Doesn't all of this make it seem really hard to adopt two-factor authentication? Well, there is a better way, right? We have a new product that's completely free for all users that adopts multi-factor authentication and doesn't compromise user experience. Welcome to Salesforce Authenticator. It actually works via our push service. Users don't have to log in typing numbers or any other information into the browser. They get a notification to their phone and they just swipe left or right. And yes, that does work on the lock screen for Android and Google users, Android and Apple users. What it does is it actually provides you more information. So it provides you context, right? You know exactly which user account's being used for which service on which device. You know what location you're approving from. And all this information is actually sent back to the org. So as an admin, you know where your users are approving their logins from. Now, it's got a nifty feature where it says always verify by here. The advantage of that is you don't even have to bug the user at all to get to FA. So if users are always logging in from their home, their couch, their workspace, it actually uses a GPS chip on the phone along with other location services to always automatically enable logons, right? So the user doesn't even have to get the phone out of their pocket. They just seamlessly are authenticated based on the fact they have their phone is with them, and they're at the location which they usually would be with their phone, so it hasn't been stolen.
And that is admin configurable, i.e. you can prevent users from doing that if you want to make sure that it requires an active response. So
yeah,
it's really a choice on your org on whether you allow that.
Yeah, if you don't want it, you can also disable that. We also adopt Touch ID, so you can consider that like an additional factor of sorts, and that's required to use the app on iOS. All right, so we're going to do a really quick demo on how to enable this.
Okay, so this is just a standard demo org. We just requested it the same way public process, but this will work for almost every. So this will work for almost every demo or almost every user license. So to just turn on basic two-factor, go to setup, and then hit setup home. And then what you want to look for is permission sets under our users. So under a permission set, you can create one that requires two-factor authentication. So I was going to hit new. We're going to label it 2FA. And then you could pick, so it automatically associates with a given license type. Like if you want all your identity users to have it automatically, you can turn it on. You leave it on none, you can apply it to users afterwards or roles.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and save that.
Yeah. So from here, you've got to go down to system permissions. And then scroll down, it's under two-factor. So you want to enable it for user interface and API logins.
Sorry, you do have to edit it first.
Yes.
Yeah, we recommend you turn it on for both.
Yes. The API one is your call, but you have to enable user login to enable the API one.
All right, you save the permission set.
Okay.
And you get a
and
manager
then we're going to assign it to a bunch of users just for tests to show you how. So we're going to hit manage assignments. We're going to assign it to our 3 demo users. So we've created a special view for the 3 that are a demo.
Right, so this is a good point, right? You don't have to put it out to all your users at once. You can just selectively choose your users. They could be the highest risk users. They could be your admins.
We actually recommend starting start at the highest permission sets, like the people that can see the most data, and work your way down if you want to do a phased rollout.
Right.
Protect the keys to the kingdom first, and then work your way to the least privileged user.
So we're going to assign these permission sets here. And that's it. We've just enabled two-factor authentication. It's as easy as that. It does not take much at all.
And
now, sorry, go ahead.
Self-enrollment is quite easy too. So we're going to switch to that right now to show you. So to show you how to do like basic TOTP login. So TOTP demo. It's a fake domain. Sorry.
Yeah, if I can remember the password, right?
So once you enable it on the account, the next login they're going to be you're going to be prompted to set up their tokens. So this can be slow at first, and then it defaults to two-factor or to Salesforce Authenticator. But if you want to use a different method, at the bottom you'll see a link that says choose another verification method.
So this is if your users prefer using Google Play or they don't have internet access. This is an alternative that you can use. Or if they prefer Microsoft Authenticator, you have an existing TOTP compatible app in your environment.
Yeah, so we're going to use verification codes from another authenticator app. That's a generic TOTP. There's going to be a third option that we're going to talk about later that's coming out in Winter 17.
Okay, so the user's going to open up their authenticator app.
So we're just using a third-party authenticator as an example.
They're going to scan the barcode. You're going to see this code. Every time they want to log on, they're going to have to use this code for a new session. So we type in the code. Oh, it's just changed, but we should be okay. I think we get some boot time. And that's it. That's all the user has to do.
So we're also going to show you Salesforce Authenticator, show you kind of how it works.
Okay, so this time we're going to run through using the new Salesforce Authenticator v2 process. This is completely free. It's on the App Store and the Google Play Store. So user just has to follow the instructions here.
Yeah. So just once you get the app, hit add account. And rather than do a barcode, what we default to is just 2 dictionary words.
It's usually got a bit of a wit about what words it uses to link up for the 2-word phrase. I think this one's quite a good example for today. You're going to get a notification.
If you look, this is what it looks like to connect. The approval one's very similar. We'll show that to you shortly. So I was going to hit connect. It syncs to Salesforce, and they're let in. So he's going to log out and log back in to show you what a push notification looks like so you can actually see how easy this is.
Okay, the user's going to get a prompt up here. Now you can actually just approve on an eye straight from here.
But if you look, it said he's coming from an OS X machine and he's using Chrome. So it does provide context. And if the user, one thing for user education, have them look at that context. If it doesn't match what they're using, immediately hit deny and report it. Because it means someone else is trying to log in.
Right, we'll quickly go through ways that as an admin you can verify how your users are logging in or ways that you can track adoption.
Yeah. So to show what people have done, there's a tab under identity, settings identity called identity verification history. And it shows each login, whether it's successful or not. Switch that from alerts to all.
So you can create views here. You can use a whole bunch of different fields for views. But what we can see here is that the last logon by SF Auth demo, required to log on to Salesforce, location of the United States, IP address of this particular IP address, logon time, and then it was succeeded. Now the user can also deny the connection. So the really useful thing there is, as a user, if you get a prompt and you're not actually trying to log in, you can report that prompt by hitting deny, and your admins can get the alert and know about it.
So if you look, we created a quick view. So if you want to switch to the alert view, that just flags those. So this is easy to create. And then we'll hit edit to show you how easy, what the logic is. It's pretty simple.
All right, to track adoption, you can just hit users. You can create a new view. Now we've created one here for demonstration purposes of no 2FA users.
Yeah, and Al's gonna hit edit. So these are ones that are in a specific profile. So it's all just based off Salesforce attributes. So all you have to do is create a quick filter on it. And the two ones that are really for two-factor authentication are has one-time password app or has Salesforce Authenticator app. So you could filter off that and do any combination of true, false you want to go, all right, who's using Google Authenticator but not Salesforce Authenticator? Who's using Salesforce Authenticator? Who's not using anything? And then filter off that and get a list. You could track adoption rates and track who still needs to be reached out to encourage them to set this up.
Right, so the user experience is pretty straightforward, I think, from an admin and from a user point of view. We also have a lot more information on Trailhead and Salesforce Help and Training articles to assist you.
All right, so the last thing, there's two things we want to talk about. First is we got a new feature coming out in Winter 17. This is dropping in mid-October, and what it adds is the ability to do hardware tokens to do two-factor without needing a phone. So if you're in an environment like DoD or banks that do not allow phones in high security areas, but you still want to do two-factor authentication, these are an option. So we've been passing these out today. They're these little, looks like a thumb drive, but they map as a keyboard or a smart card. And what they do instead is they act as a cryptographic hardware token to authenticate users with 2FA. So it uses a standard called FIDO U2F, which U2F stands for Universal Second Factor.
Right, and this is an alliance that's shared with a whole bunch of companies in the Bay Area, Google being another one, and they can use it across multiple services.
Yeah, so Google and Yubico are the ones who had started this program. So it uses public key cryptography. There's a private key that's non-exportable in the device, so it can't be copied. And because it's signing a unique token every time, it's resistant to replay attacks. It's, as we said, really useful in mobile-free environments where you can't have cell phones. But the nice thing about it is when you associate the UTF token, it creates a domain-specific key in the device. So you have the browser passes the domain that's requesting the authentication, and that only that key will be used. So it knows which one it's done, and that key can't be used elsewhere.
Okay, some additional protections just while we're here. You've got logging capabilities. Please investigate those. There's all kinds of information. We've also got a lot more information at the developer booth and the admin booth, admin cafe, sorry, to ask about. Consider applying IP whitelisted ranges and locking sessions to IPs if possible in your organization. CAG20 controls is also a good read-up. That just tells you how to harden your enterprise environment, your systems that you're using. Salesforce also have a cool feature which we provide for free to all customers, and that's a 24/7 incident response team that actively monitor what's going on with your org.
All right, so questions. Anyone who asks a question gets a U2F token.
I don't think I need a token. When you mentioned if the user hits deny, you can get it on your list view, but can you run a workflow off of that and get an actual alert of something?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, double check with me. We can give you some information on how to do that. Just post a link on the chatter page, or I can we'll swap business cards afterwards, and we can run you through how to do that. Or there's also the developer booth. Thanks. There's a bunch of different vendors. These particular ones, I won't name the vendor, but they're here at this conference this week, so definitely check them out. They've got a booth downstairs. Just research UTF tokens on the internet, and they're generally pretty cheap.
A UTF only one is, I've seen about $20. If you want to add extra features like other HOTPs, it's up to the $40 or $50 range. And
if you buy in bulk,
that's just Amazon prices. So there's you'd have to talk to the vendors for corporate discounts for bulk.
We actually internally use tokens at Salesforce. So the app is free, right? So everyone can use the app. You don't have to have a Harvard token. And you can even use a third-party app. We support that too. You'd have to check with Microsoft. Unfortunately, I'm not sure. Yeah.
So I haven't seen U2F support.
You should be able to use Salesforce Authenticator as a additional login option because it supports TOTP.
Do you want one?
Salesforce Authenticator will work with Microsoft.
I'm gonna try to throw and not hit Rachel.
Cool.
Are there any complications or differences when using this with Eclipse or the AMP migration tool?
For API logons, yes, the initial registration, but you don't have to enable it for all users as well. This is more for your everyday user who's going to get compromised on the endpoint system. Think of it more that way, and it's also a case of if you apply it for a large number of users, it means they have to target one specific user, which makes it a very sophisticated type of attack. So,
cool.
Yeah.
What about single sign-on or like Okta? Do you prefer that over this UTF or doing?
So, I guess, look, your single sign-on solution can adopt two-factor authentication. Here at Salesforce, we're really just trying to drive that adoption across all of our customers, right? We want to see 2FA, whether it's through their single sign-on process or internally, directly. I believe you may be able to use logon flows if your single sign-on, say, didn't, but double check with me or at the developer booth, and we can go through that, yeah. No worries. Oh, did you get a token? There we go.
Can you use a partner community with the authentication methods?
I've seen it work with chatter-free licenses, so I believe so. But again, just to double check and confirm, if you can drop me a note on the chatter page or come to the developer booth, we can exchange details and just link you up with that. Okay, just to finish up real quick. So you've seen the trust presence here at Dreamforce this year. There's a whole bunch of talks which have happened. Unfortunately, this is the last one. Quite sad. But they should be available in video form, so definitely check them out. We've got the admin cafe. If you're not caffeinated enough, just go over there, chat to our trust team that are working on that cafe line. Also, we've got the developer booth, so please go there. They're staffed by trust members who work as engineers at Salesforce. So they know their stuff. It's worth checking out and going and saying hi. We also have trailhead modules on how to do this, how to set up two-factor authentication, a whole bunch of general security advice for your org. They can be found at salesforce.com/security. And if you have any questions, please post on the chatter page.
Thanks for coming. I guess I'll do first come, first serve for the remaining ones to give out.